we're calling this Putting a Face on Crime. And it's going to be my favorite class of the semester, not because Lori's here. Well, partly because Lori's here, but partly because you're here, but also because Cora's here. It is the biggest thing. Hey, so, we just had elections the other day. Can you go to the next slide? This is a billboard that, okay, so if you're not in the, here, let me lay this out. The guy on the right, John Fetterman. So he is now going to be the newest senator from Pennsylvania. And, oh my God, all right, hang on.
Wait, this isn't, we're definitely not here to say go Fetterman.
No, that's not about that. There, but listen, here's the deal. His opponent had this really cool advertisement campaign about Fetterman, which is really pretty hilarious, actually. The billboard right there, soft on skin, soft on bottoms, soft on crime. I mean, that's pretty cool, actually. You gotta love that. And so the idea is soft on crime. And we thought, soft on crime. Oz's critique in one of his, in many of his commercials, was that Fetterman is really into letting lots of people out of prison, including murderers, letting murderers out of prison. And I'm like, that's really interesting. How would I think about that?
I think you could just go to the next.
If I didn't, how would I think about it if I just didn't really know, just letting murderers out of prison? So, next slide. Here is a photo of Lori with two gentlemen with whom she was working on a project up at Rockview Prison. And on the left is Irvin Moore, on the right is Will Hall. Will Hall is no longer in Rockview, but these became your friends, your guys.
Family.
Family. And and this photo was taken probably 10 years ago, 12 years ago maybe, a while ago, 10 years ago. Yeah. So anyway, so we thought, there's a couple murderers and who are friends of Lori's. And then I thought, well.
And wait, so what was the point? The murder? I guess go one more time.
That Fetterman is soft on crime because he's supporting letting criminals, including murderers, out of prison. And so it just so happens that the guy on the left is out, and because I'm recognized as one of the 101 most dangerous professors in America, he's here in class with us today. And we're going to have a conversation with him.
Come on up, Irvin Moore.
More importantly, though, Cora is here.
My question is, where is this dangerous murderer sitting amongst us? Not the man with the dog. Not the man with the beautiful smile.
The awesome swag.
Not the most handsome one of those two up there. But yes, here he is, and here I am. Go ahead.
Yeah, come on.
So we're going to talk today about crime with Cora. This is Cora with a K.
Come on. Sit down.
Her birthday was May 11th, 2020.
Yes.
So she's young.
A little over 2 years.
So the interesting thing about Irvin, besides that he's a murderer, anyway, is that his life path crossed life paths with Mr. Fetterman. So we're not here to talk about Mr. Fetterman, but he does have a personal relationship to you, Irvin. So why don't you start there and then tell us a little bit about your story?
We do have a relationship because I would not be here today if it was not for Lieutenant Governor Fetterman and the Board of Parole, the Board of Pardons, who granted me a pardon in March of 2021, which will mean I've been out here in what we call the world for about 18 months, 17, 18, 19 months.
And how long were you in there?
I was about to tell them that, but I was incarcerated for 52 years. And I'm going to let that sink in first. I went to prison in 1969. Before man walked on the moon, before your mothers and fathers heard of Woodstock, before you were even a thought, and probably before some of your mothers and fathers were even alive. That's when I went to prison. Now, and I know it's hard to believe, it's incredulous. Say, this young-looking, so handsome man could not possibly have served 52 long years in prison. But believe me, I did. And it was because of the lieutenant governor, because of his mindset regarding not being soft on crime, but his mindset regarding the humanity that needs to be the approach to criminal justice, which has not existed for over 40 years. There are men like myself, well, to begin with, again, because of Lori, because of Sam, who are virtually my brother and sister, they put the idea in my head about 16, 17 years ago that, you know, when you come out, not if, but when you come out of prison, you could come work for us at Penn State University. Now, and it's not that that was a grandiose thought or something inconceivable, because I could do that. And I started thinking, you know, I could do that. You know, I can do that. And then I will do that. And today, even though I don't work for World in Conversation, which is what I intended to do and wanted to do, I work for Penn State University. I work for the College of Education, Department of Education and Social Equity, Restorative Justice Initiative. Think about that. I work for an office who deals with restorative justice. Not punitive justice, not deterrence, but restorative justice. A new concept, and one that a lot of people thought I fit the bill for. I may have some experience along those lines.
I think we, just real quickly, I don't think you said that you had a life sentence. Which is really important.
Again, I made the assumption that they would have known that, but I was serving a life sentence. And what does that mean? Intentionally or otherwise, you kill somebody, you cause someone the death of someone, you could be found guilty of first-degree murder, second-degree murder, third-degree murder. I was found guilty of first-degree murder. Whether or not I intended for this to happen, I was a young boy with a gun. Some of the same things that you see happening today in our major cities. Young boys with guns. And not intending something like this to happen, but it did. And I went to court and I wound up being found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life. And unlike so many other states, life in Pennsylvania is and has always been life. Not life without the benefit of parole. They don't have to say that. Life in Pennsylvania, since its inception, has always been until you die. So someone thought that I, at the age of 22, which is the same age that some of you guys are now, someone thought that I and my life was irredeemable, that I would be no good for anyone, nowhere, at any time, ever, and that I deserved to die in prison.
And I just want to amplify that statement while you're listening. You know, are people irredeemable, right? Like, not that's not a rhetorical question, that's a real one. So as Irvin is talking, are people irredeemable? Or when? Or who is irredeemable?
And because, say, Dr. Oz or politicians, you know, they use semantics, they use emotions, and they flare passions. And because they use the term and the word murderer, and that Lieutenant Governor Fetterman was soft on crime, allowing murderers to re-enter our society. Let me give you a brief explanation of what I've been doing since I've been home. Working for Restorative Justice Initiative, I do what I'm doing now. I'm doing what we would like a host of you guys to do once you sign up for World in Conversation, which is facilitate dialogue. I talk to people. More importantly, I listen to people. I do that at Restorative Justice Initiative. I do that separate and distinct and aside from them. I do that every day of my life. I talk to people. Part of what I talk to them about, of course, is my experience. 52 years of being in prison, and I went to prison when prison was prison.
Tell us about that.
There were no books. There was no library. There was no school. There was no radio. There was no television. I, being young, got into a couple scraps, wound up in the hole. And all you guys know what the hole is, yes? Separate and distinct from general population, the hole is where they place you for punishment. And I was in the hole, in a cell, 6 foot by 8 foot, concrete block, steel. And the only thing in there was a mattress on the floor with no sheet, a blanket, and a toilet. That was it.
And a what?
A toilet.
A toilet.
A toilet. I was in a toilet, and that's where they wanted me to sleep and stay. As they fed me breakfast, which consists of 2 pieces of white bread and a cup of coffee. And they fed me supper, which consisted of 2 pieces of bread and a cup of coffee. And they fed me lunch. Once the supper was done, and they closed the door, then they rolled a wooden door on the outside of that across it so that all light was taken from the cell. And I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. And I would sit there on that mattress, 22 years old, and say, Lord, Lord, why? Why? Who am I? Sometimes my mind would shoot to a period in my life when I was sitting at home with my parents and my brothers and sisters with a bowl of cereal, just laughing. It seemed like yesterday. And here I was in a cell with my drawers, underwear, otherwise naked, on a mattress, with the crumblings of a piece of bread that I had compressed in the palm of my hand that I could nibble on it. That was the penitentiary then. It's changed a bit, quite a bit, in fact. But even with all the changes, jail is still jail, prison is still prison. It's still not a place I would wish my worst enemy, though I am not, at this point in my life and growth and development, a proponent of the abolition of prisons. And I tell you why. prisons right now are a necessary adjunct to civilization because not every human being needs to be out here. I have met some of the greatest human beings in my life walking the halls of prison on both sides, guards and what we used to call inmates. Now we may call them justice impacted persons. But I met some of the best that I've ever met in my life or will ever meet. Concurrently, I have met the face of evil inside, and I do not want to see that face out here. So, until something can happen in the minds of man that causes us to change who we are, or realize that we as human beings have a role to play in terms of being responsible in a civilized community, we need to have prisons.
So can I ask a question?
Of course you can.
I also, we'd like to get some questions from you all as well. But for the moment, tell us, you're here, so we know how the story comes out in a way, and when you went in. But what happened to get you into prison from your understanding?
Okay.
Like, tell us what are some of the things we should know about you to help us understand if, in fact, Fetterman is soft on crime.
Well, I grew up. It's one of the things that happened. I left boyhood and became a man in the true sense of the word. I educated myself because, as I said, initially we had no books, no radio, no TV. You might be in there for years and not know who the President of the United States was. We called this on this side of the wall because for 26 years I was at Graterford, which has a 40 to 50 foot wall all the way around it. And we couldn't even see outside of the wall. You'd go to the yard and you'd see everyone in the yard doing this, talking to each other, but they're looking up because it's the only place we could see. We couldn't see distance. So we'd look up at the clouds. Maybe we'd see a plane or a bird, a flock of birds. That was the only life that we could see in Graterford. When I went to Rockview, which is about 10 minutes away from here, I don't know if any of you folk know that there's a penitentiary right down the road, Benner Pike.
How many people know that Rockview is that? Okay.
A few. Mm-hmm. But I was there for 26 years. Strange that it worked out that way. But before I went there, we started on the path of what was called prison reform. Myself, some other young guys, some of the older guys, we wanted and demanded change. We knew it was wrong. We knew what was happening inside to us was wrong, unconscionable. We wanted, like you guys, we wanted to learn. Excuse me. I'm so sorry about this. Remember, these are totally new to me, and I'm having so much fun with them, but I'm still learning how they operate. And I keep forgetting to put it on mute, put it on vibrate, or turn it off. I keep forgetting, or if I turn it off, it'll be off all day.
Can I ask you about in the realm that you're talking about with wanting change,
yes, ma'am.
And you knew that this shouldn't be happening to us?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there's some people in here, so I want you to respond to this, who are thinking, why shouldn't you be punished? Why shouldn't people who go to prison be punished, especially if someone who goes for murder?
Okay,
Can you respond to that?
I will tell you one thing. When I left Pennsylvania, well, first and foremost, there was a time in my life when I marched around, I'm from Philadelphia, when I marched around City Hall in protest, me and 100 or 200 other young people and old marched around Philadelphia in protest at City Hall. And in protest of what? We were protesting the fact that the USSR, which was the Soviet bloc at that time, or Russia, and Red China had incarcerated over 1 million each of their citizens. To us, that was unconscionable. We said they have over 1 million of their citizens, and we didn't know any Chinese folk or any Russian folk, but we knew that they were human beings. And to incarcerate that many people, something is wrong. And we marched around in protest. Well, today, the United States of America is the leading carceral entity on the planet. We have incarcerated over 2.3 million United States citizens. We have 4.6 under some form of parole, probation, or carceral supervision. We have over 11 million of our citizens or more with criminal records. The leading carceral entity in the world now is the United States of America.
So why shouldn't people be punished?
Because we are human beings. Because we are capable of change. Because we can grow. We can become mature. We can become more than who we were. And we all are more than the worst mistakes we've ever made in our lives. There's no such thing as an unredeemable soul. I mean, some guys, it may take longer for some people. I wish it hadn't taken 52 years for me, because I was ready. I had changed 50 years ago, but I had a hard time convincing them of that.
But don't you think, though, that your change was connected to being punished?
No.
What was it connected?
No, I don't.
Okay. What was it connected to?
I don't look at punishment as being necessary. I think punishment produces punishment. I think harm produces harm. I think, one of the things that I became in later years was a canine handler, which is why I have Cora with me now. Some of you guys have been in the class and have seen or have been here on campus long enough to have seen my dog Fred and I. Fred was a 150, 60-pound St. Bernard that I used to walk the campus with. Everyone knew Fred. Everyone loved Fred. Fred and I would walk, and they'd see us from across the street and say, "Hey, Fred." They wouldn't say my name, but they'd say Fred. I'd just wave back and say, "Hey, how's everybody?" Fred was a rescue dog. Came from a horrible, horrible situation on a farm as a breeder. Kept him, you should have saw some of the photographs of the conditions that he was kept in. Well, Cora, that is laying at my feet, similarly is a rescue dog. Horrible conditions. I don't know the nature of the abuse, but she's been abused to the point where she is terrified of two-leggeds, terrified of us. Some of you that have seen Cora or have approached and saw how she responds, she's non-aggressive, but she'll shake and tremble and pull back, terrified of us. And so part of my job is not just to love them, which I do, but part of my job is to show and teach her that not all two-leggeds are beasts, that we're not all vicious dogs. And I've had Cora for maybe a month and a half to 2 months, and some of you have already seen that there's change in effect. She's changed, she's learning. When I first got her, for the first 3 days, she slept on the couch, I slept in the bed. I slept on the couch with her for 2 days. On the third day, I said, "I'm going to bed." And I went in and got in the bed. She stayed on the couch. The fourth day, I said the same thing. "I am going to bed," and walked into the bedroom, got undressed, laid down, and maybe 5-10 minutes later, I hear the pad of feet on my hardwood floor. Here she comes. And she got in the bed next to me, trembling, shaking. I just grabbed her, pulled her close to me, and we both went to sleep.
So you think?
Now she beats me into the bed. I have to move her over so I can get space. I said, come on, girl. Because she's learned that I will not hurt her. She's learned I am not a vicious beast. She has learned this.
But how does that apply to people who have gone astray? Many, and I have friends who will tell me this, will, being one of them, who would say, there was nothing anybody could have done to stop me from being drawn to the streets and the life that was in the street, and that's it. Like it wasn't. He came from a good family who loved him, and whatever. And yet he wound up with a life sentence for murder.
Situations happen.
Mm-hmm.
Some people go into situations like that with their eyes wide open. Some are drawn into it. Some are victimized themselves. Some are adjacent players. But the law is the law. And regardless of the role that you played, if you're caught up in the system, you're caught up. And you may wind up with a life sentence. But again, as I said, the reason why I don't promote the abolishment, why I don't promote the abolishment of prisons, because there's some people, I think, who still need prison, just to be separate and distinct from who we are as a society. But there are too many other people in prison who would be better served, or we would be better served, by having them home, having them with their families. Right now, I have a job. I pay taxes. Tuesday, I voted for the second time in my life. The first time was in November. I have a car. I have an apartment. I have friends. I have family who depend on me. I am talking to people in churches, masjids, schools. I'm talking to you guys. This morning, I was at Center County Correctional Facility, not as an inmate, but as a presenter. I went there with some other folk so we could argue our case before the Prison Board of Inspectors. I walked in, and when I walked out, I said, oh, wow, I am walking out. Wonderful experience. But the point I'm making is that there are so many other folk like myself who need to be home with their families, their loved ones, in their communities, in their neighborhoods, back in society, who have, like myself, been educated enough in prison, who have learned enough in prison, who have demonstrated enough in prison about who they are as human beings, and who recognize that.
So, Sam, can we take some questions?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there something you want to say first?
No.
No or yes?
No.
Oh, you have. Okay. So yeah. Why don't we open it up to questions? Hang on.
Here. No, right here.
No.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Chris.
he has a mic. You're next.
Go ahead, bro. You're on. Bro, you're on.
All right. The question that I have is, how do we differentiate? How do we know? Because I completely agree that most people should be out of jail, but how do we know? You know what I mean?
How do
you
you
said
know
there's
what?
you said there's some evil that you saw in prison and there's some not. How do we make sure that we're letting out all the knots?
Hey, can I interject? He never said most people should be out.
Well, you know what I mean?
Okay, I got you, but that's really
a percentage.
We're not even. I'm not even going to assume that he meant most people. Anybody that comes out, why do we let them out? How do we know? First and foremost, I served 52 years. If they don't know who I am by the time I went out, they would never know. But it doesn't take 50 years to determine by a person's actions, their deeds, word of mouth, by what some of the most exhaustive, evaluative, and diagnostic systems in existence exist in prison. They know the good guys from the bad guys. They do. For over 40 plus years, I was an educator. After I began to learn myself, and I learned that the best way to learn is to teach someone else. I started teaching those who I knew didn't know as much as I did about history, about art, about science, about math, about geography, about any and every subject I could get my hands on. You know, that's one of the reasons why I'm working for the Penn State University right now, because I do have those credentials. I have that experience. And I left a track record. I was in organizations, I was in groups, I started organizations and groups. We had, in 1972, we had a consortium of universities and colleges coming into Greater Fort, offering a degree-oriented program. This is after we brought the GED in, after we started school, basic ABE school, adult basic education. After we did that, we said, what about us getting degrees? What about, can't we take this further? Some of us were capable of doing this. I knew I was. And we, when I say we, I mean us inmates, us prisoners, us convicts, we started this. And people throughout the years have seen what we have been able to do. And they're saying, well, Irvin Moore, John Jones, Peter, they know. So in answer to your question, of course there will be mistakes every now and then. There's going to be. But for the most part, they know who's who.
So if I could interject before you ask a question, one of the things to think about is that it costs a lot of money to incarcerate somebody. And when I think about, just for example, in the most simplest of terms, right, our willingness to create an industry of incarceration where people have established themselves in a way to make so much profit over the incarceration of each single prisoner, that it makes it, there's a kind of a natural inclination or a natural push or pull to incarcerate as many people as possible because you got people making profit off of that, right? So it's not, so at some point in time, there are decisions that are being made about what crimes or what things that people do should be associated with a certain amount of time behind bars. And in this country, what has happened in the past, 40, 50 years is that much of that decision is determined by profit on the part of a certain number of people. It's not just established. And so the goal always is you want to get people who don't need to be, who we don't need to incarcerate. Understand, there's the crimes that people commit, and you got to say, like, okay, what's the fair amount of time? And you might say, well, if you take a life, you lose your life. Okay, well, that's fine to say that. But then the problem is each take a life has a very different story behind it. And so each one has to be evaluated on its own terms. And so the goal is to get people out of prison. It's a lot less expensive for Irvin Moore to be here than to be incarcerated still. And so, this is the kind of thing to be thinking about a great deal. So that's something on the terms. But anyway, what's the next question?
Here you go.
I know you said, you talked about the whole, and I know that there's a lot of research from psychologists about how, like, the serious psychological toll being in solitary confinement puts on inmates' minds. So I wanted to know, like, what exactly was your experience when you were in the hole? Like, what were you thinking? How was your mental, stuff like that, at least from when you were in general population to when you would be in the hole?
Well, the hole. I don't often go back there, but I do. I was lucky, I was blessed, I was young, I was resilient. The amount of time that I spent in the hole wasn't exorbitant. Some of my friends, some people I know have been in the hole. I was in there for 30 days, then I was in there for 3 months, and then I was in there for 6 months. I think the longest I was in the hole was 6 months.
Hey,
I know people
Irvin,
that have.
there are a lot of students in the class who don't, English is not their first language, or they're not from the U.S. Can you explain again what the whole is?
Oh, okay.
Just in very basic quick terms.
Isolation, solitary confinement. As I said initially, if you commit an infraction, which could be you took a piece of bread from the dining hall, put it in your pocket to take it back to your cell to eat, that's an infraction. You stepped out of line and stepped in front of another person where your buddy was at so you could eat together, that's an infraction. Fighting, of course, is an infraction. Stealing is an infraction. Kissing your mother or your wife or your girlfriend more than one time in the visiting room is an infraction. That could put you in the hole. That could put you in isolation, solitary confinement. And as I was about to say to the young student, the most time I spent in the hole was about 6 months. But I know people that have been in the hole for 30 years, nonstop. Listen to what I'm telling you. I know men who have been in solitary confinement for over 30 years. Now, come on now. Come on. Why? Because they were deemed a threat? Because they talked back incessantly? Because they stood up against what they thought was unjust treatment? But that's the system. And I was lucky, I say, because I was resilient. I had a mind, and my imagination carried me everywhere. Everywhere. For the first part, as I said, I was in the cell with nothing, not a pencil, not a piece of paper. And I would devise games and scenarios and recite things that I had read or heard. I opened my mind up to understand what the state is like, what the nation is like, what the world is like, what our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, is like, with its closest neighbor, which is 4.2 light years away. Light years traveling at the speed of 186,000 miles every second. And it would take us 4.5 years to reach our closest neighbor. Now, stuff like that humbles you. I said, oh my Lord. But it expanded my mind and afforded me the ability to withstand the whole, afforded me the ability to withstand the life sentence that I had on my back, that afforded me the ability as a young person to stand what was a possible lifetime of incarceration, and the fact that my family was dying all around me. But yes, some people are lucky, some people are blessed, some people are genetically equipped to deal with that gross injustice. But there's been studies done that determined years and years ago the impact of that kind of punishment. Man's inhumanity to man, cruel, what they call cruel and unjust punishment.
Hey, so Irvin, I have a question. All right. Okay, go ahead, bro.
So when you got out of prison for the first time ever, what's the first thing that you wanted to do or that you did that really made you happy?
Can I answer this question?
This man thinks he knows me better than I know myself.
Oh,
but
I
go
know
ahead.
this one.
Go ahead, Sam.
He ate he wanted an article of food. He wanted something that he had been seeing for 45 years advertised on the television.
Because it didn't exist when I went in.
Okay, so.
But I've been hearing about 2 all beef.
No, hang on, don't say it. Anybody know what it is?
They all know now.
Well, they don't know now. They never even heard that commercial. They don't know that.
There was a commercial that came out 45 plus years ago.
You know what it is, bro?
That when I saw it, I just salivated at the mouth. I said,
Yeah.
I got to get some. I got to get that. I got to.
A Big Mac. And what happened when you...
Well, the commercial, first and foremost, was 2 all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on the sesame seed bun. 2 all beef patties, special cheese, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on the sesame seed bun. And I said, I could not wait to get out to get one of those.
And what happened after you took the first
Well,
bite?
actually, before I even took the first bite, when I went to be interviewed in front of the Board of Pardons and Parole, some of them asked me, "We heard you looking for a Big Mac, Mr. Moore," because I had been saying this for years. You know, that's a common question. What are you going to do when you first get out? I'm going to get a Big Mac. What are you going to first do? I'm going to get a Big Mac. And they had heard this at the parole, at the Pardons Board. So when I got to the halfway house where they sent me to, the first day, I hadn't been there. I walked in the door, still had my bags, and the woman who was one of the supervisors there said, "Oh, you're the guy with the dog, the big dog, and you want a Big Mac, I heard." I said, "Yes, ma'am, I do." She said, "Well, put your bags down, come on, get in the car." I said, "What?" "Put your bags down and come on, get in the car." I hadn't been there 5 minutes. We were out the door and went to McDonald's. And she ordered a Big Mac. I didn't know how to order. She's ordering by numbers, and she's talking to a machine. I said, "You order," and she did. And I got back to the place and unwrapped it. Now, for all those years before, I had seen the Big Mac on television where it was advertised 2 all beef patties, and that's what they were. They were huge, all beef, thick. I said, I have to get some. And when I unwrapped this and looked at it, I said, wow, this looks like the little crap that they substitute as meat in the joint. I said, no, it's not. And I took a bite. I haven't eaten a Big Mac since. No, I'm not going to do that.
Okay, there's another question. Oh, there's a couple right over. Yeah.
Thank you for your questions.
Go ahead, bro.
Here, right in front of me. Thank you for sharing. My question is like, here, to your
Right
left.
Here. No, right here. Right now, right
To
here.
your left.
Stand up, bro. Stand up.
Oh,
You got me now?
I got you.
All right. Thanks for sharing. My question is like, what do you think is the key difference between the inmates that come out from that kind of like mental hole or mental struggle and want to discover and love and grow themselves versus those that end up being like, oh, the system got me here, I hate this, I hate that. And I mean, hate is a strong word. And like, just maybe other kinds that, you know, shouldn't deserve to come out. Like, what's the difference in the mindset and growth and spreading love
Okay,
there?
can you put his question, simplify his question for me?
Yeah, what's the difference between people who grow and the people that just fail?
Oh.
Yo, he could write a book on this, so we're going to keep it short because we
We're
got a
gonna
lot of
keep it short.
questions.
We're going to keep it short, but it's usually obvious. Humanity. I'm going to do that. Compassion, empathy, all the things that we've learned that are on the plus side, not the minus side. On the minus side is viciousness. selfishness, egotism, self-centeredness, and along with them, the ability and the need and the want and desire to hurt, because they hurt quite often. Trauma-informed, understanding what that means, which is why, again, I see the possibilities of growth for just about anybody, because the majority of people that hurt have been hurt. The majority of people that harm have been harmed. And I have been in situations with brothers and others who have been deemed some of the worst of the worst, but with kindness, caring, understanding, empathy, with knowledge and education, with what you guys can learn through dialogue facilitation. Change is possible. It's obvious to see. And I've seen it time and time and time and time again. I was just hoping, beyond hope, that they'd be able to see that in me. And one day someone did.
If I could add something to this, Lori commonly Lori commonly says, I have met holy men in behind bars, some of the most holy, most sacred human beings behind bars, including Mr. Hull and Lori have a deep, deep spiritual relationship together, right back and forth, and have been writing back and forth for many, many years, and is really has now his master's in divinity, but is a holy man. This is a guy. Irvin was his mentor, which Irvin is the one that got him on the path. Bro, you can stand maybe. Yeah.
I've got two questions. So the first one: do you believe that it's just for a person to kill another person? Do you believe that it's just for a person?
Is it ever just for a person to kill another person, to
And
take
then-
another life?
And then to continue on with his life, even though like the other person was killed and he doesn't get to live his? And the second question, you said that punishment, I think, provides punishment or something like that. So I wanted to ask you, what do you think the point of punishment is?
Yeah.
The second question?
The second one's, what's the point of punishment? The first one's complex, my friend.
It doesn't have to be,
All right.
because it deals with the circumstance. Every circumstance can be slightly different. Some are the same, but it's according to the circumstance. So is it ever just to take a life? What if it was to save the life of your baby? You had to take that life. What if it was accidental? What if it was unintended? I mean, we've already seen some scenarios where the taking of a life, can be at least understood. Euthanasia for some couples, or some mothers with their children, or some men with their wives, or vice versa, where the pain of incapacitation just becomes too great. And I love this person so much, I can't stand another second of seeing her suffer. So I put an extra dose of an opioid or something in their medicine, and they peacefully transition. Is that justified? In his mind, it is. Okay. And what was the second part?
What's the second question?
Is it ever? Oh, punishment.
What's the
What's
point of
the point?
punishment?
The point of punishment.
Dude, we have a lot of questions, so you got 30 seconds on this one.
Punishment. I mean, first you'd have to define what punishment is. Hurting someone to avoid them hurting themselves or someone else, is that punishment? Punishment when a parent disciplines their child, not by abusing them, by punishment, maybe taking away a favorite toy or food, or standing in the corner, or even me growing up, a belt on the ass.
You know, if I can,
Of course.
I'm gonna jump in, and then we have another question. In
Right.
here.
Oh yeah, over
Yeah.
there, because
So
you've been waiting for a while,
What
and
I,
then here.
what I want to say is, Irvin, one thing that I've learned, I've gotten from Irvin, just hearing you respond to those two questions is, you walk into the gray area in a way, and this, you know, you've got in your, I mean, this is your life. This is who you are. How old are you now?
I am 76 years old.
All right. So, yeah. So, by the way, he made a comment about his cell phone earlier. Yo, he's more agile in his cell phone than probably half of y'all in here, man. This guy is amazing how quickly he learned that cell phone. But in any case, what I've learned, what I've watched of you, is the degree to which you can live in the gray area and navigate the gray area in a way that is just defies the possibilities for most people who just can't do that. You live there, you navigate it, you are in it. Yes.
Yes. Do I stand up too? Hi. Hello.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So, I first off, I want to say I really enjoyed your talk, and
Thank you.
and there's something while I was like listening, there's something I was like really curious about. So I know earlier you said that like people. Correct me if I like did paraphrase
Sure.
this like correctly, but you said something about like people shouldn't get punishment because people have like potential to change and grow, which I also like agree that people do have that potential. But you also said that during your experience you've seen that people that deserves to be like in jail and you've seen like the greatest evil. So what would you say about like those people that you saw? Do you think that they like shouldn't get punishment because they have potential to grow, or are they like the exceptions, if that makes sense?
Good question. Now, I'm going to ask you, isn't being in prison punishment enough? I mean, when you're sent to prison, they don't say, go to prison so you can be punished. We're sending you to prison because you are being punished by being in prison and away from society. So, you have someone in prison who's not growing. We do everything that we can to accommodate that person and to aid and assist their growth and development until they can grow and we can deem them able to be returned to society.
If they
There's
get there.
I said if.
There's a question
If that
here.
growth does not happen, what else can we do?
Yeah.
Oh,
I want to go to a question.
Did I answer
here.
your question?
yes.
Thank
Oh,
you.
that
Go
person.
ahead. Go ahead, Lori.
Wait, I know you also had your hand up first, and then we'll go here.
Okay. Hi. I don't know you remember. You probably don't. I helped you at a store that I worked at downtown in the summer of 2021. Fred needed water. I made sure they got water. You needed an orange Penn State shirt. I made sure you got that orange Penn State shirt.
Of course I remember.
Really?
Of course. Was it on College Avenue?
Yeah. It was a Lion Cup. Yeah.
Not North Atherton, not South Atherton. Was it on College Avenue?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. I just wanted to
Of
say.
course I remember you.
You're one of those people. Like you're probably the only customer I remember from that job. You were just so kind, and you're just one of those people that stuck with me. Anyways.
You hear that? Yeah. And they told me I should die in prison.
I just wanted to ask, what do you think, like maybe like students like our age, what should we do if we like care about this issue of prison reform and all that stuff? Like what should we actively be doing right now?
Be aware of what it is. A lot of people don't know what the criminal justice system is, how it impacts every life that's in here, or the prison industrial complex. Like Sam said, how they depend on prisons to make profit. You've all heard of Al Capone, Scarface, Frank Nitti, Bugs Moran, these notorious gangsters from 70, 80 years ago. Not one of them, not one, receives the amount of time that a young 18-year-old boy today receives for robbery or for carrying a gun. Not necessarily hurting anyone. The laws have changed to such a degree that it's almost impossible for a person to go to jail for what's considered, or go to the penitentiary for what's considered a short time. Yeah. When I was first arrested, if you committed a homicide or you killed somebody, be it by accident, be it intentionally, be it in the course of a robbery, or be it both of you guys tussling and the guy falls and hits his head. First degree, you receive a life sentence. Second degree, you receive 10 to 20 years. Third degree, you get 7.5 to 15 years, max. Today, first degree is a life sentence. Second degree is a life sentence. Third degree is 20 years. Now, what happened that they up to penalties like that? They wanted to make sure that people stay in prison now. And that's the changes that have occurred. Another question I asked years ago. Wait a minute, Sam. I'm going to be brief.
All right. Okay. All right.
I'm going to be brief. Years ago, I would have asked an audience this size, how many of you guys have been impacted by prisons, or has someone in your family member who's been in prison? And a few hands would go up. If I ask today and says, how many of your either your family members, someone that you know, or someone in your neighborhood that you know has ever been impacted by prison, how many hands would go up? Let me see it. A lot more than the old days, because prison impacts us all. And if you don't know someone or don't have anyone, remember, the budget for Pennsylvania DOC just for this year is $2.4 billion, and it's recession-proof and never goes down. So you're paying for it.
A question here.
Okay, so I'm only 19 years old, and I feel like I've been conditioned through the 19 years of living. So you being in prison for over 50 years, how have you avoided being conditioned by imprisonment? Like, how have you now functioned in normalcy in a normal way? Because you've been there for, you were in prison for a
good
really
question.
long time.
Well, the first answer to that is I read, I talked to people, I kept abreast of what was happening. Remember, it was different from when I first went in, when there was no radio, no TV, no newspapers. Today, I can be in prison and know exactly what's going on everywhere. And I kept abreast of this. I asked questions. I talked to people. I often tell Sam and Laurie about growing up, having a condition, a speech impediment that got me into a lot of trouble. I stuttered horribly. I could not put two words together. Someone say something, and I'm not doing this to make fun, but that's how I talk. So I couldn't talk. And people made fun of that. You know, that's what kids do. We're young, and they're pointing, and they're laughing at me, and I don't know how to respond. So I get mad, I get angry. Well, I learned to speak, as you would be doing once you enroll in what? World in Conversation, as you're going to be doing. And I learned to listen.
All right.
So
I have. Hey,
go ahead.
I have to take the last question from the stream, okay? So if you have a question for Irvin, we have two and a half minutes left. So if you have a question for Irvin, talk to him after class. Listen, or stop by his house. He lives behind Wendy's over there on University Drive.
That's right.
But listen.
Stop in the neighborhood.
Yo, but hang on a second. Hang on. Irvin, this is a question from the stream.
Yes.
Can in 2 minutes you say something about justice for victims. And how do you see that? Like, how is that?
Of course. Of the
hang on.
Of the utmost importance, justice for victims, because they are people. They have been impacted. They have been harmed. They are members of the community, as we all are. What restorative justice means is that we're going to find a way and a means of justice that impacts not only the perpetrator, and we're going to find him guilty and send him to prison, but we're going to find a way to ameliorate the amount of harm that he's done and find a way to make the community itself whole. Some kind of way that is. Because what happens to the victims is of the utmost importance. What we're finding out today, I know 2 minutes, Sam, is that in so many families that have been victimized, those same families have what's been called or deemed a perpetrator also in that family. So many families that I've grown up with have a person that's been murdered or robbed or raped and have a person in prison for robbery, murder, or rape. All in the same family. So 6 on one hand, half a dozen on the other. We can't take one without the other. What happens to the victims is of the utmost importance, and we can't let them out of the equation.
And I just want to emphasize what Irvin just said about restorative justice, because I think when we talk about victims and offenders, this is in some way the only paradigm that actually accounts for offenders and victims, and that the belief and the work is that everybody has been harmed, everybody has a role to play in rebuilding and restoring after harm. So I guess it's time to go.
Thank you all.